why it's imperative to process our thoughts for a organized life. If you're anything like me, you may like, who cares how I process thoughts? I just want to get things done, and you're in go, go, go mode. That was how I thought for many, many years. And I was naturally organized, so I never correlated the two together. And I just did whatever I needed to do at that time. I was all about serving me and not serving others. I wasn't loving me and I wasn't loving others. So that was my forte. And I trust that you guys don't have that problem whatsoever. And I also didn't realize that when I was thinking certain things, how it actually affected what I did in my day-to-day life. Okay, so in order for us to stay organized and process our lives and our thoughts productively, we need to start with our awareness. So now, to go back real quick again, I was naturally organized, but I never said I was productive. And there was a difference. And oh my goodness, because I over accentuated myself with everything I did. I was over organized. Type A, I think if there's a letter before A, that's what I was. So being aware really brought me down to earth and helped with where I was at. And being aware of our thoughts, writing them down, structuring time of quietness in order to give ourselves time to think is so imperative, and it's a must do. It's not when we can, if we can. No. Schedule this into some part of your life somehow in some way. You need to have a quiet time. Tony Robbins talks about if you don't have 10 minutes, you don't have a life. So figure out where those 10 minutes are. Even if it's scattered throughout the day, it's so imperative to really process and allow our brains to do this. Because if you're doing it at night and you can't sleep because your thoughts are just constantly go, 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 right? That's a very big thing. If I have that going on, that means I didn't give myself enough time throughout the day to process what my subconscious finally has quiet time to do it. That's why you're doing those racing thoughts at night. It's because it's finally quiet enough for your thoughts to process. It's part of your mechanics. You need to eat, you need to sleep, and your brain needs to process thoughts. It's a must. And so if we allow ourselves throughout the day to process thoughts and to think and to have clarity, even if it's just like writing things down, getting it out of our head. For me, I need to get it out of my head. And once it's out of my head, oof, oh my goodness. A lot of people call this brain dumping. It's journaling, really, to any type of degree. I have my whiteboards, right? And so I encourage those who are struggling with that you need a time earlier than right before bed to do it. Or you could be like other people, and I've also been guilty of this, is to continue the noise. Go to sleep with the TV on. That way your brain doesn't have a chance to process this. I said it so fast, it sounded like one word. And that's going to be detrimental. And in the long run, at some point, some way, you're going to break down. And you're like, why am I breaking down? I'm not sad. I'm not going through something. There's nothing going on in my life but my body is just breaking down right now. It's because you did not allow your thoughts to process, and it's going to hurt you in the long run. So let's be intentional about it. Let's do it ahead of time. Let's be in control of when we process our thoughts. And that will help us with so many things in our lives more than we think they are. I need to breathe for a minute. I'm going to have some coffee. Are you guys having coffee when you listen to this? Are you guys going for a run? Are you working out? Are you doing chores around the house? Like, let me know what you guys are doing and up to at this moment, because it's just fun. I can't see you, and yet I still feel connected with you because I know I'm not the only one going through this and have learned through this. So I want to hear your thoughts. All right, give me a second. I'm going to sip my coffee. Who is a coffee drinker or a tea drink? I like tea too. Our brains are so amazing. Have you guys really thought about how our brains are designed? They're so intricate. And our capability of understanding our thoughts from multiple perspectives is insane. in a good way, right? Our brains are created for aim, for clarity, for resolution all the time. Our brain, that's how we are designed. We're not, and it likes to use less energy too. We'll talk about that in another episode. But let's bring it back to the beginning. But our mindset and our perception, our memory, our decision making, our influences, our behaviors is only a part of how we process thoughts. I'm reading my notes as I'm talking to you guys. That's why I'm having trouble with that word. Cognitive. Ooh, see, as soon as I stopped looking at the word, I can say it. I don't know why. I have a hard time reading it. Cognitive. Oh man, I hope you guys are having fun with this. However, with our unconsciousness, it processes significantly different. So it influences our actions, and it's also usually before we even are aware of we making a decision, right? It just kind of does it naturally, like a habit. And our unconscious is really what plays out in our dreams. And right before if we don't process our thoughts, like we are purposely able to take the subconscious thoughts, bring them into the forefront, and make them conscious thoughts. That's what we need to do. There's a reason why it's there. So we have this thing called neuroplasticity. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard about it. And if you have, fantastic. I'm just going to be recapping because I'm still very new to this concept myself. I'm only a few years of understanding what this is. However, if you're new to it as well, this is what it is. This refers to our brain's ability to recognize itself by forming new connections throughout our lives. By changing our thoughts, we can potentially influence our brain structure and its function, affecting our actions. By changing our thoughts, y'all, by changing our thoughts, we can influence our brain's structure and our function and eventually change the actions. We have complete control over what we can do by changing how we think. So in essence, our thoughts, both consciously and unconsciously, right, they act as a framework that guides our perspective of the world, and it shapes our responses. And it makes a lot of sense, right? If we grew up in a certain way or been influenced by certain things, we're going to respond through that lens separately than somebody else who went through a completely different experience. So for me, I went through trauma in an abusive relationship. And for those who've never been in an abusive relationship, it's really fun talking with them because they have like no idea how to even relate to me. And that's okay. I'm not asking them to. I don't want them to go through what I went through for us to have a conversation on a similar level, right? I can understand where they're coming from because I'm able to open up my perspectives into what they went through and what their life is. And the biggest person, to be honest, is my mom. My mom, bless her, her life was definitely difficult and hard, but in different ways than mine. And I don't want to go into detail because I'm not at liberty to share, but it's completely different. I've never experienced what she went through, but I can understand it because I've met other people in my life who are similar. Yet she doesn't know what I went through because she's never gone through that experience. So there has been many, many years of us really not getting along because we could not relate to each other in any way. And so we've recently been able to find some commonalities and some things that we do both enjoy and share. And that has helped our relationship. And we respect the other person's life and their journey of where they're going through. And it's okay that we don't relate. It's okay. It's finally been to a place more for me than it is for her, I think. And she'll correct me if I'm wrong, of course. But it's okay that she doesn't understand what I went through. It's okay that she can't relate to what I went through. And I'm actually glad that she's never been through that. And so even if she can't relate, she's now at a place, I think earlier she just kind of was like, I don't get it, so I'm going to ignore it. And also I think too, she had this protective barrier where she didn't want to get hurt by my pain. And I wasn't asking her to. but my mom is very empathetic. And so I think she just naturally started taking on that weight and it was hurting her. And so she just kind of reflected it. And I think she did this unconsciously, to be honest. But now we're at a place where she can listen and not let it affect her as much. And she can just let it be my situation, my own story without it becoming hers. Anyway, I digress. Okay, so that's a great example, though, of what our brains do. And it's so cool. And so our brains have tons of information, right? Our brains are constantly going through and filtering out all this information that we're bombarded with consistently. That's why it takes longer for the ad to affect us. We have to see it over and over and over and over again. We have to trust it over and over and over again for us to even consume it, right? And so all this tons and billions and millions and trillions of dollars are poured into advertisement for just that alone. Yet on the backside of it, it's because we need more information to actually make the next step into consuming whatever they're trying to sell us. Right? But how is that good for our brains? Do we ever think about that? Do we need more? Yeah, we crave quietness. Those who live a busy lifestyle crave the quietness, and we need that quietness for us to process our thoughts. Okay, so I'm kind of going over my notes. I don't necessarily want to give you guys everything on my notes. I overdid my notes, which is good. I'd rather have more information about what I want to talk to you guys about, but I also want to just kind of feel it in the moment, what's going on. And we have an identity assessment that's 100% free. You go to my website. You do not have to put in your email, y'all. I left it that way on purpose because if you're anything like me, you're kind of hesitant, especially if it's like somebody new and you just heard about it. So I don't want you guys to feel obligated. I'm not trying to put you guys through a marketing funnel in any way. Like, I have options for you guys to sign up for other things. And then that way you're doing it purposely. Like, okay, I'm going to give you my information because I want you to contact me. You know what I'm saying? Not because I want to access this thing. I'm going to give you my email. No. So on the website, the link's in the show notes to access the identity assessment. And it's so fantastic. I love this assessment. I did it myself. And I believe it's 5 or 6 pages. I'm trying to remember because the way my website put it together. And it just goes into really deep detail. It asks you really good questions. And I put it together purposely with those who are completely lost, for those who are just starting either from 0 or even the negative. I started from the negative. I had to work up to 0 before I could launch into the positive numbers. So I have been there myself, and I don't want to see you guys struggling in any of this. And some of us kind of have our identity to a degree, right? We got kids, we got a family, we're moving, we're grooving, but we still might feel a little lost. We're like, okay, well, what else is there? And there might be more to your story than you think there are. Hint, hint, there is. There is always more. And not necessarily that you need to do more. You might need to actually do less in order to gain more, to have more fulfillment. And so that's the goal. And so this assessment kind of just evaluates where you're at currently. And you go at your own pace and you write down your own notes. I don't have any of that information. Like you don't submit it. You don't write it into the computer or your phone or nothing like that. It's all the questions are there, and then you write it in your own. And you should be able to take screenshots. You should be able to save the information. There's ways where you can like print it, like whatever you guys need to do, like please feel free to do it. That's why it's there. It's free access for you guys to take it. So I say all this because this is the first part of your foundation before you can process your thoughts. If you're trying to do the tools I'm about to give you, I promise they will come. If I give you the tools now to process your thoughts and your identity is not secured, or you put it off thinking, yeah, no, I know who I am. I'm good. Like I did in my early 20s, because apparently in your early 20s, you know everything. Yeah. And Then you move forward with processing your thoughts in the wrong direction. So that's why it's so imperative to start with your identity. Make sure that your focus is straight, that you're where you're wanting to be, at least in that direction. So then the next step is processing the thoughts, because that doesn't stop while you're trying to do life, right? Your thoughts are always going to come. And so as we really dissect into thought processing, and eventually there's actually going to be a course I'm going to create on it. It's going to go deeper than this. I want you guys to be able to process thoughts effectively, efficiently, quickly, and it only bringing you life and bringing others life around you. Because God knows we've all had those thoughts. All of us at some point in our life have had those thoughts, and you know what I'm talking about. And they're not yours. You don't have to accept those thoughts. You don't have to say like, oh my gosh, I thought them. That must mean that I believe that. No. I am a true believer that your first thoughts are most likely just gathered information or something you've heard from somewhere else. Or you know what I'm saying? Like, I always think the first thought is always kind of fleeting. And it's the second thought that we have control over. So a first thought comes, and let's say it's a negative towards you thought. And I'm not going to go into detail about it, but it could be anything that's negative that makes you feel like you're sick to your stomach, or it takes you away from living life. And that's your first thought. What you do with that second thought, you have control over. And then there's usually time in between. Sometimes my second thought comes in just to get rid of the first thought, but then I realize like, oh wait, I agreed with the first thought and I don't actually agree with the first thought. Let's reel it back. Hang on. Because I was just trying to get rid of it. I'm like, yeah. Okay, that's fine. But like, whoa. No. We don't do that. Anyway, so there's a purpose to this, is what I'm trying to say after all of that. But this is really good. Okay, so the 5 tools. The first one is being aware of our thoughts. We talked about the imperative of this. I'm not going to go into too much time, but being aware of our thoughts is the number one thing. You cannot stop a bad habit without being aware of your habit. And then we're going to talk about habits on our next episode, which is awesome. Being aware of our thoughts, paying attention to especially reoccurring thoughts. Anything that you have consistently or it's close to that, it's very similar, and it's not good, and it leads you down rabbit holes after rabbit hole after rabbit hole, and you're like 20 minutes later, you're like, wait, what? Like, you lose your mind to a degree, if you really think about it, to this thought, and it's not worth it. I did that when I found out my husband had a girlfriend. I was constantly just on these rabbit holes with that thought processing. And it was time wasted, energy wasted, and I couldn't change anything about it. So I was like, why spend time on this? Now, I didn't do it like that. Now, looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was such a waste of time. But I had to go through a lot to get to the place I am now, where I can have that a negative thought come up and go, that's not something I agree with. Oh, no, I needed a good laugh. And then I move on, right? That's not how I do it when I have a negative thought come and I'm like, that's so goofy and stupid. Like, I'm not even going to entertain this. Bye. Okay. So any type of destructive thoughts, they need to be taken care of immediately. They're time consuming, energy wasting, and they're only going to hurt you and hurt others. And when you allow those thoughts to continue and you feed those thoughts, by feeding them, it means that you continue that thought and you agree with it. And you're like, yeah, I am guilty of this. I should be ashamed of this. I should be condemned for this. I hate myself for this. You know what I'm talking about? Like, it could be, there are worse words you can use here, right? But we've all had, at least at one point in our life, have gone through this, I'm sure. And if you haven't, let me know. My goodness. But they affect your decision making. Even if you're like, no, this is just in my head, but how I act in life has nothing to do with it's in my head. Yes. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Do not ignore those thoughts. So be aware of them. Be aware of them. Okay. And then figuring out, okay, then the number 2 is engaging with our thoughts, right? We talked about this also. Figuring out how to analyze things in a certain way is going to be helpful for us. Practicing self-regulation and self-awareness will always better ourselves into some degree. Jordan Peterson says this: face the demands of life voluntarily, respond to a challenge instead of bracing for catastrophe. And I love this because I have done both, where I just don't respond to a challenge. I put it off to the side. I'm like, oh, whatever. I don't put enough energy into something that's hard, and it comes up and it bites me in the patootie, right? And so now I face them voluntarily, depending on what it is. Obviously, there's things that are a waste of time that you don't need to spend money or time or energy on. So being aware of that, and we'll talk more as we go through the podcast, you guys will understand. Eventually, we're going to be talking about discernment and wisdom and all that in season 2. Like, there's more coming to how we do this, but just being aware and then processing them with engagement of like, okay, what ones do I need to respond to? Which ones do I not need to respond to? Which ones do I need to like, okay, I have this thought, but this does not define me. Go away. And that's going to be hard, right? So writing them down is going to be imperative. Putting your thoughts on paper can help you clarify them. They can identify patterns, right? So if every day you're like, okay, I thought this, just whatever you remember, or as it's coming up, write it down. Like, why am I thinking this? And then do it again the next day. And then after a couple of days, you can kind of look at it and go, oh my goodness, I'm thinking a lot of negative stuff. There's no gratitude in this. We talk about gratitude later, guys. There's a lot of just awareness, and how we engage with us helps us to process it better. Talking through your thoughts is very good. Thinking out loud or talking to yourself is very valuable. But talking about it with God, praying, God, I'm having these thoughts. Like, what do you think about it? Right? And if you can, sharing your thoughts with a trusted friend or a mentor, especially when you need clarity on certain thoughts. So be very careful about who you share what with. That's going to be, we talk about that later on this season, is our relationships. Practicing mindfulness. We talked about this a little bit in regards to giving yourself time to empty out your space. Breathing is the most powerful tool you can use when you're processing thoughts. Do not give yourself a hard time if you have these negative thoughts. Again, they're most not likely yours. They're only yours if you claim them and you act on them. And you're like, this is mine. No, God says you're loved and you're forgiven. Like, not saying that's an excuse to go out and like do things that you want to do that hurt yourself or others. But there's a whole reason why there is that love and forgiveness there. So you want to turn away from those things, right? But to continually add guilt, shame, and condemnation to yourself is not going to be the right thing to do. It's only going to, how is that going to be helpful, right? Okay, you messed up. Now what, right? So that's just one example. That's an extreme example. I'm sharing that because I went through that, and I was also, it didn't help that I was fed through that. So as I was actually in the middle of processing what I went through, because I cheated on my first husband, unfortunately, because I didn't process my thoughts. Part of it is because I didn't process how I needed to be in my early 20s. And so when stress and confusion came, I didn't know what to do, and it had nothing to do with him. That's what sucks about it too. It had nothing to do with like I was mad at him or anything like that. It had nothing to do with him. I was actually trying to get out of a bad business relationship back in the day. Anyway, I have to tell you guys about that whole story one of these days. It was just really insane. But again, at that time, I didn't know it. It's not until later where I actually had time to process it and go, oh my goodness, I did that because of this. You know how your brain just does what it needs to do. Your brain does what it needs to do to get that hit and to be where it needs to be. And while I was in the process of healing from that and understanding like what I really did, then so-and-so comes into the picture, my second husband at that time, and he interfered that with what he wanted to do and his thoughts. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, let's add shame and guilt and condemnation to what you did. Even though I wasn't a part of that relationship, I'm going to make you feel horrible. And so it continued. It continued for years. So I was being punished with my from my second husband for something I did with my first husband. And my first husband had already forgiven me. Like, we went through a whole thing and we talked about it years later, and him and I were good. But yet my second husband was like, nope. So it was like, and then like, let's find other things I can add to this, right? Because you have to constantly feed it. So I was getting it from him. And then because I believed it and because I was so subservient to him, I accepted it and I believed it myself as well. So you got to be careful what thoughts you allow in and what thoughts you feed and what thoughts you go through. So practice mindfulness. All that was tool number 2. Tool number 2. I said that right. All right. So number 3 is reframing and challenging these thoughts. All right. Especially if they're not good. Decluttering our minds is a successful technique for processing the thoughts with purpose, because we want our brains to have the space to have the energy and time and room that it needs to do healthy and productive and good projects. And it can't do that if it's cluttered with all this negativity and this junk, right? So if you think about it, as we're talking about reassembling, we have to see like, okay, these are all the pieces that are in my brain right now. That's the awareness, right? And then, okay, what do I continue to keep here? That's the engagement. What stays, what goes. And then now we're reframing and challenging. So now we're getting rid of anything that doesn't belong there. And it might take some more time than others. And some of it might be harder to let go of because you've had it for so long, it's almost comforting. Oh, all this is good, but I really want to hang on to this. I really want to hang on to this. So not many people know this, but I struggled with an eating disorder, with actually more than one, for years. Years I struggled with eating disorders. And it's a mental state, right? And I remember when I surrendered my life to God the first time, I was trying to. I was not at all putting it into action. I just thought I liked the idea of it. But one of the things that I wanted to hang on to, and I remember even telling him this, my prayer was this. I said, God, you can have all of my life, everything that's part of it, except my eating disorder. I want to keep that. Guess what went first? You know what I mean? Guess what? God's like, nope, we're not keeping that in your life. And my heart goes out to anybody struggling with that, because it is a mental wiring. If you could get yourself into that state in the first place, you can get yourself out. It is not easy. It does take time. For me, what happened was my heart, I could physically feel my heart in physical pain every single time I would practice some sort of, because I did it all. I was all of it. And I'm not going to say any of the words because I don't want to trigger anybody. But my heart physically was hurting so bad. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a heart attack. And then I'm going to go to the hospital, and then they're going to hook me up, and then I'm going to have to go to an institution. Like, I was so scared of what that entailed. And so it was not easy, and it did take time, and I wasn't doing it perfectly for a while, but I was already on the road to recovery. So if you guys need help with that, I've been there for, I want to say it was a good decade. I struggled with that, maybe a little bit longer. And nobody knew about it. This is the first time I've actually talked about it. So you guys get the first. Oh my goodness, that's how much I love you guys. And I want to help anybody who's struggling for that. Reach out to me, DM me in the Instagram if you need to do it as a private, or I also do coaching, and I can help you guys with that. I'm not licensed or anything, but I just more of like, hey, I've been there. There's no judgment, and I'm in your corner, and I can help you with practical tools to move forward in that. Okay, so I gave you guys such a good example about reframing and challenging those thoughts. So I want you guys to also practice that, challenging your beliefs, not in a negative way, but just like, is this true? Is this what's going on? Right? Anything that you pay attention to, you're going to see it that way. So how you receive things is how you see things. I did not mean it to be rhyming, but it's a good way to remember it, I guess. So seeking balance. Seek balance in all of this. Okay, so I have a lot of notes, guys. Oh my goodness. Okay, and it's good to have a negative emotions. I'm not trying to say you should be sunshine and rainbows all the time. Like nobody wants that. We need to be realistic. But just being aware of like if our bodies are communicating to us like, hey, this sucks, just pay attention to it and then really take time to listen to it. And we talk about our bodies as we move forward in other podcast episodes too. But processing thoughts is very difficult. And it's not easy, especially if you've never done it before, right? And they don't teach us this usually. I mean, I think it's being more aware of it now. We're teaching kids how to regulate, and that's so imperative. And I'm seeing a huge difference in my kids now that they're aware of their thoughts. Like these are powerful tools. And I didn't have that growing up. My parents didn't know this. They didn't need it growing up. They lived differently than I did, but I didn't know how to process my thoughts. So I just did whatever I wanted to do when I felt like doing it. Okay, so now we're going to go into number 4, thinking with doing. Now we're going to put them together. There's an action plan. So we are aware of our thoughts, right? And we're engaging with the right thoughts, acknowledging what's not to be engaged with. We're reframing and we're challenging the negative thoughts. We're removing these things. We're decluttering our brains, right? And now it's time to take action. We have to, and we're going to go into this in the habit, so I don't want to get into it too much now, but we have to reframe any negative thoughts into the right ones, replacing them with the correct statements as needed. Like if there's just too much, like we need to get rid of it. So thinking with doing. We need to be able to put into action what we want purposefully. James 1:23-24 says, if anybody hears the word and does not do what it says, they're like someone who looks intently at their face in a mirror, and then when they walk away, they forget what they look like. James also talks about when you have faith and you don't do the works with the faith's dead. Like it goes hand in hand. So taking action, not reaction, taking action based on our thoughts is crucial for improving our thought process and moving forward. And then I'm not going to go into another story because you guys have been hearing all of that. I've been giving you guys a lot of background. So a good way to do this is to practice how you're going to respond when it's not happening. So it's hard to like, okay, well, how do I actually do this, right? Practice when it's not happening. When your quiet time, in your space, while you're driving, like whatever it is, like figure out a time and a place and do it then. And it can only just be for a few minutes. Okay, when these thoughts come, this is how I'm going to respond. When these type of things come into my brain, this is how I'm going to rebuke them or rebuttal or whatever the case may be, because everyone's thoughts are going to be different. And so you have to practice when it's in a safe place, so to speak, in your brain, when it's in a healthy place, and then be ready for it. It's almost like a game, right? I have to give you guys this because this is so part of it. So husband and wife time, I'm going to say it that way, which is supposed to be amazing and beautiful from what I hear. During that time, almost every single night, it was torture. And my whole perspective was I was preparing for a battle every single night. And it was not fun. It was absolutely just, I really just pray that nobody has to go through this. Like there's just like, okay, bad. And then there's like, no, evil. And that's completely different than having a bad night. And so every night, my brain, because it was more like physically, yes, but I was able to heal part of it. Some of it hasn't healed even 2.5 years later. But it was more of the emotional and spiritual aspect than anything else. The mental abuse that would happen every night. And sometimes throughout like the day, it would be there too, but it was really during that time because intention was so demonic, and I don't use that word lightly, into what was expected during that time. I'm really trying to be careful of how I word these things so that way little ears don't have to worry about it. And so I eventually was able, because it took me a while to figure this out, what I'm teaching you guys. But eventually what I would do is I would practice in the morning, replacing what he was going to say with truth. And I found truth in the Bible. And I really went through Ephesians, and everything that God said was completely contradictory to what my husband was saying. It really goes into what thought processing can do. And it made a difference, because before I did that, it was like I had to accept it, and it was scary and confusing, and it was dark. I can't tell you guys how dark it was. And I needed light, and God provided light for me. So that's an extreme example. So I'm hoping everybody else's circumstances is in a much better situation than that, so it'd be easier for them. And then number 5 is to practice this regularly. So have your tool belt, have it ready. And again, you really only need it for a short period of time, right? But you have to be armored. You have to be ready. You have to take the action. You have to practice this. Have it ready to go. So that way when it happens, you can like, boom, 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 boom. Got you. I'm going to put boom in the truth. No, that's a lie. That's not in my house. Like, have fun with it. It is your body. It is your brain. It is your job to protect it. No one's going to do it for you. Only you can do this, okay? So if only us can protect us from wildfires, only you can protect your brain from what comes into it, okay? Again, do not give yourself a hard time on the first thought. It's the second thought, because you can kick out that first thought with your second thought, okay? It talks about taking your thoughts captive and examining it and going, is this really from God? Is this really what I need to hear right now? Is this really the right time to take care of this? And then either get rid of it or put it in your arsenal of where it needs to go at the right time. Okay, so you guys got the 5 tools. Any questions about this? Leave comments below. I know we went into a lot of detail throughout the tools. I have it in the, you know what, I'll leave it in the show notes for you guys. How about that? And just a little quick tips if you weren't writing it down. But I want the best for you guys. I'm here for you. We have a Facebook community group where it's non-judgmental. It's the best people ever. I love all my people in the group. And meet us in there and just share. Like, I'll put weekly stuff in there just for fun, questions, or just rays of hope. And I would love to see you guys over there. Again, I also want you guys to check out the free identity assessment. And I also have an Instagram page. I just do that for fun. So you'll get inspirational quotes on there, but it's just random. I'm not doing Instagram for anything, but just for fun, because I just like Instagram. All right. I love you guys, and I will see you in the next one.